Let's have a quick flashback of what we've learned so far in writing. The last few weeks we have learned about narrative writing. We were able to write personal narratives and practice on how to become better writers. This week we are going to start learning about informative writing. So let's look at our quick targets. Our first target is, I can define informative writing. So after today, you should be able to tell me or define in your own words what informative writing is and what you need to do to be able to write an informative text. I can use informative text to develop my understanding of informative writing. So we will also be able to preview some different informative texts to help us understand what we need to do when we write an informative text ourselves. So, what will we do today? We know that good writers use inspiration from authors in text to become better writers ourselves. So today, we are going to develop our understanding of informative writing by reading informative texts to determine what we will need in our own informative writing. So we're going to look at some informative texts to help us understand what we should do when we start to write. So informative writing. Informative writing is nonfiction writing that conveys information about a topic. This means it is factual or real. Many examples of informational writing can be found in newspapers and nonfiction books. So next we're going to check out some informative texts. We'll read some of these together, and I want you to determine or notice some things that happen in each of these different types of informative texts. That way we can start a list of what we think will be needed. Here's a book about magnetism. This is an informative text. We're not going to read it, we're just going to take notes on what we see throughout the text. So here's the first page. I notice a table of contents. So that is something we should probably list on our list of things that we see in informative text. I see a lot of pictures and maybe even some question marks to maybe start the text to make it interesting, like a hook. I also notice some bold words. These bold words may be words that are important or definitions. I'm seeing a lot of pictures that are real and not fake. I also see diagrams that show what you're supposed to be learning about. I also see pictures that are labeled and explain what is shown in the picture. I also notice that they're using true facts when they are writing. They're using real information. So for example, it says, like all magnets, Earth has two poles where magnetism is strongest. Earth's magnetic poles are near the geographic north and south poles, but they are not the same points. So those are real facts and information that they use in their writing. Again, I see more pictures that have captions, and I see a glossary at the end. So here's one example of an informative text that explains what we might need to have in our informative text. Let's go ahead and look at this text. This is a newspaper text that tells us about butterflies. What I notice from this text is that it has a title here at the top, and it has a date. It has a picture that also has a caption. So these are things, if we're going to write it in informative text, that we'll need. We'll need to have pictures with captions. We'll need to have a title. I also see a bolded word, a populations. So if there's new vocabulary, it's most likely going to be bold. And I see some facts and details about butterflies. So it says butterfly numbers are bouncing back. For some species, the population news signifies that 2019 was the best year for growth in more than 2 decades, according to the journal Butterfly Conservation. So sometimes in an informative text, you use the article to help you write, and you give them a shout out, like it's from the journal Butterfly Conservation. So you're using facts from a different source, and you're naming what that source is. So this is some things that you will probably need in an informative text. We have a title. We have a picture with an explanation of what it is. We have bolded words for words that we'll need to define. And we have facts, real facts from sources that we use to collect information. Here you can see a part of a nonfiction text. There's something important I saw, and this is why I chose it to show you guys. I see subheadings. So these subheadings talk about or give you an idea what is going to be talked about after the subheading. So this says, I never missed a beat. So that's probably talking about maybe something that the person said, or maybe it's something that they wish they knew before. There's also this one that says Paralympic star. So this must be about a Paralympic star. So subtitles are important to have in informative text as well. So that was great. Now pause the video and think about the following. Think about what you saw in all those informative texts. What was similar about them? What does that show us about what we need in our informative writing? So quickly pause the video and think about these questions. Alright, great. Now let's look at the list of things we will need. Here's a picture of the different things we will need for our informative writing. So looking at the informative text examples, let's see what we noticed. Informative text has a title. There are bolded words for definitions. We saw real photographs with captions that explain what was in those photographs. We saw quotes from other sources. We found real facts and information about the topic we read about. We saw subheadings to break up the text into different sections and to explain different parts of the text. And we saw a lot of dates and specific data to show that it's an informative text. These are all the things that we will need to have when writing an informative text ourselves. We're going to be starting researching about the topic sea turtles. We're going to start slow and just research two different things, a video resource and a nonfiction book resource. We will then use those resources to help us write our own informative text about sea turtles. So now that we've went through different informative texts and made a list of what we'll need in our own informative writing, let's review our target. I can define informative writing. We already defined informative writing as a non-fictional text, so you should be able to do the same. Our second target was, I can use informative texts to develop my understanding of informative writing. So now that we already went through this process, we saw some informative texts. Hopefully it helped you understand what we will be using or what we'll need to do when we start to write our own informative text. So now it is your turn. Answer the questions about what is needed for informative writing below. Then make sure you comment and answer the following question. What is one fact that you know about sea turtles? We will be researching about sea turtles tomorrow. All right, friends, thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow.